Mark was not a man who chased wonders. He lived simply, rising with the cock's crow, tapping his palm trees before the sun stretched its full spine. The forest near Nzu River was his routine path, quiet and sacred. But that morning, something broke the rhythm. He heard it first, a woman's laughter, light and echoing like a flute in water. He paused, confused. No one came to Nzu this early. And certainly not women. The river was sacred, taboo for bathing. Cautiously, he stepped closer, parting the leaves of the tall elephant grass. Then he saw her. She stood waist-deep in the shimmering water, her back to him, hair long and dark like woven night, cascading down to her hips. The sun struck her skin, and it shimmered, not like ordinary skin, but like something caught between silk and scale. When she turned, her face was heart-shaped, her eyes too round, too clear. She smiled at him with no shame, no fear. Mark stammered an apology and turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. Soft, polite, almost regal. "Why are you afraid? Is this not your river too?" She introduced herself as Amaka. No surname, no known family. She spoke beautifully, but there was something odd. She didn't know what a wrapper was called the palm wine he carried, forest milk, and when he offered to guide her back to the village, she declined with a cryptic smile. "I go where the water allows," she said. Mark walked away that day with a heart pounding too fast and thoughts knotted in questions. But he returned the next day, and the next. She was always there, bathing, waiting, and each time he left, the forest seemed quieter, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Mark had never known obsession until Amaka. Every day after his palm wine rounds, he would find himself drifting toward the Nzu River, heart pounding, palms damp. She was always there, waiting, seated on a smooth rock like a queen carved from the river itself. Her laughter, soft and strange, filled the air even when her lips didn't move. And though she never stepped beyond the water's edge, Mark felt closer to her than anyone in the world. She never spoke of her past, never mentioned a family, but when Mark asked her to be his wife, she simply smiled and nodded, no surprise, no hesitation. It was as though she had known the question was coming. "I will come," she said softly, "but only if you keep one promise. On nights when the moon is full, do not follow me. Do not ask where I go." Mark, so drunk on her presence he could barely breathe, agreed without question. When he returned to the village and announced their engagement, mouths hung open. Old men spat and muttered, no family, no background, and she bathes alone in a sacred place? Women scoffed, saying Mark had been cursed by lust. Children whispered that she was a river woman with no shadow. But Mark didn't care. She moved into his small compound on the edge of the forest, barefoot and silent, always veiled at dusk. She never visited the market, never joined the village women, and yet Mark beamed with pride whenever she served him yam and pepper soup with hands too smooth for a farmer's wife. He loved her, deeply, fiercely, and he honored her wish. Until the first full moon rose, and the air in their compound turned cold. And Mark, though he said nothing, began to wonder. At first, Mark thought he had stumbled into paradise. Since Amaka moved in, his once meager palm wine business began to flourish. His trees yielded sweeter sap, buyers came from neighboring villages, and even his body, once worn from years of tapping, felt stronger. The village men who once mocked him now eyed him with envy. "Marriage has favored you," they said. And truly, Mark believed it had. But then, the oddities began. His goats, once loyal and curious, started refusing to enter the compound. They would bleat and dig their hooves into the soil, turning away from the gate as if something inside terrified them. Mark laughed it off at first. Animals had moods too, didn't they? But when it happened again and again, his smile began to falter. Snakes became a constant presence. Not the small, harmless kind, but long, glistening ones curled near the cooking stones, basking in the morning sun as though they lived there. Amaka never seemed afraid. In fact, she barely acknowledged them. One morning, Mark saw her whispering softly to a green one with red eyes before it slithered back into the bush. And then, there were her disappearances. Every full moon, just after nightfall, Amaka would quietly wrap herself in her thick brown wrapper and slip into the forest. "Don't wait up," she'd say. And she never returned until dawn. Mark never asked. Not yet. She also cooked the same dish every single day, bitter leaf soup. Rich, spicy, and delicious. But no matter how long the day was or how hungry he felt, Amaka never ate with him. She always claimed, "I already ate," or "I'm fasting today." Her plate was never touched. Mark began to wonder, was this still bliss, or something else pretending to be it? The night the sacred Udala tree withered without warning, fear spread like wildfire through the village. No one dared speak of it, but everyone knew something unnatural had happened. The tree had stood for centuries, its roots said to be older than the gods that blessed their fathers. It didn't just die. It blackened. It crumbled. And the earth around it turned cold. That evening, as dusk crawled in like a shiver, the village priest arrived at Mark's compound barefoot, ash smeared across his forehead, and his eyes rolled halfway into his skull. He didn't knock. He simply walked in, his voice thick with trance. "You have brought death into the land." Mark blinked, confused and startled. "What?" The land groans. "The river has stopped dreaming. A forbidden union walks among us, and it wears the skin of beauty." Mark's heart pounded. "She waits for the moon," the priest whispered, shaking. "Her laughter kills birds. Her shadow lies. Watch it, in firelight. Only fire speaks the truth." Then the priest turned and staggered away without another word, leaving the air colder than before. That night, fear made Mark restless. Amaka was inside, humming softly, weaving a basket with dried raffia. He lit the hearth. The flames crackled. Shadows stretched across the wall. And then he saw it. Amaka's figure sat perfectly still on the mat, but her shadow danced. It didn't mimic her arms or her head. It slithered, rising and undulating like a snake ready to strike. Her head tilted slightly, but in the firelight, the shadows had split, forked like a serpent's tongue. Mark's breath caught. He didn't speak. Couldn't. But from that moment, one truth burned brighter than the fire. He had married something not meant for man. The full moon rose like a secret exposed, bright, round, watching. Amaka, as always, kissed Mark's cheek with a distant smile and whispered, "I need fresh air." Her wrapper fluttered around her ankles as she slipped into the night, bare feet brushing the grass. But this time, Mark didn't stay behind. He waited a heartbeat, then followed, careful not to let his footsteps betray him. She moved swiftly, unnaturally, deeper into the forest path behind their compound, a path no one used after dark. Mark's heart pounded as the tall grass closed around him, his breath shallow. Then he saw it, a clearing, lit with cold moonlight. In its center stood a shrine made from twisted wood and red cloth, snakes coiled lazily around the base. Charms dangled from low-hanging trees. The air smelled of wet earth and something metallic, blood, maybe. And there, just beyond the shrine, stood Amaka. But she was changing. Her back arched, her skin glistening like scales as it peeled away in soft strips. Her legs twisted and joined, merging into a powerful serpent's tail. She hissed low, eyes glowing gold under the moon, her tongue flicking from lips that were no longer hers. Mark gasped too loud. She turned sharply, but he was already running. Branches scratched his arms, roots grabbed at his feet. He didn't stop. Couldn't. His heart was breaking. His world had fractured in one moonlit moment. He had loved her. Now he feared her. And as he stumbled home beneath the same moon that watched everything, Mark knew this was no ordinary love story. It was a curse wrapped in beauty. and he had opened it with his own hands. Mark waited until dawn, when the fog still clung to the trees like secrets that refused to lift. Amaka returned quietly, just as she always did after a full moon, feet bare, eyes tired, wrapper neat, as if she had never stepped beyond their compound. But Mark's hands trembled as he stood by the doorway, blocking her path. "Where do you go?" he asked, his voice raw. She froze. Their eyes met. "You followed me," she whispered. Not a question. A knowing. Mark's jaw tightened. "I saw everything." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, Amaka lowered herself to the ground, her head bowed. "Then you know why I never wanted this to happen," she said quietly. "I didn't choose this life, Mark. I was cursed by my own blood." She looked up, eyes glistening. "My twin sister." Envy turned her cruel. She summoned a priest from the Forbidden Hills, twisted a blessing into punishment. I became half of what I was, trapped between worlds. Mark's heart thudded. And the shrine? The snakes? The lies? They weren't lies, she said. My people, we were once guardians of this land. River spirits. We protected the balance. Until humans betrayed us, poisoned our waters, hunted us down. She stepped closer. I'm not a monster, Mark. I'm the last of my kind. If you tell them, if you expose me, I will die. And with me, the last river spirit this land has. Her voice trembled. You don't know what will follow. Mark's breath caught. She placed a hand on his chest. You loved me once. Please, don't turn that love into a weapon. Behind her, the wind stirred. The earth seemed to hold its breath. And Mark, torn between truth and loyalty, didn't know which would destroy more, exposing her or protecting her. The village square buzzed like a disturbed hornet nest as Mark, exhausted and shaking, stood before the elders with truth heavy on his tongue. He told them everything, Amaka's origin, the curse, the shrine hidden beneath moonlight, her plea. By the time he finished, even the birds had stopped singing. Elder Yuzo, oldest and fiercest, slapped his staff on the ground. Burn her. That's the only way to lift this darkness. She's deceived us all, dancing with demons while we drink their poison. But Elder Chioma, her eyes dim with ancient knowing, shook her head. You fool. You'd burn the only thread keeping our river alive. Do you think curses can't burn back? Arguments erupted like fire in dry grass. Some shouted for justice. Others warned of balance, of forgotten covenants made with the spirits long before memory. A vote was called for a hands raised, murmurs exchanged. But just as the village priest lifted his hand to declare the tally, a thunderous crack split the sky. Lightning, sharp and vengeful, struck the shrine's thatched roof at the edge of the square. It exploded in flame, scattering embers like cursed fireflies into the night. A sudden silence swallowed everything. The next morning, the villagers gathered around a Makwi river. But the riverbed was dry. No trickle, no dampness. Just cracked mud, fish bones, and silence so thick it made babies cry for no reason. The elders said nothing, not a word, because now they knew. Their delay had invited judgment. And the land had chosen its own punishment. Mark's feet pounded the earth like war drums as he raced through the narrow path home. Leaves slapped against his skin. Birds scattered. His breath tore from his chest in gasps. He didn't care. He just needed to get to her, to Amaka, to the truth, to whatever might still be waiting. But when he reached the hut, silence met him. No movement. No humming. No sign of Amaka. Amaka! He called out, breathless. Nothing. He stepped inside. The air was thick, charged. The hearth was cold. Her wrapper hung limply over the chair. But the floor, something shimmered in the center of the room. He stepped closer. There, coiled like a discarded memory, was a long strip of snakeskin. Translucent. Still warm. Beside it sat a clay pot, one he'd never seen before. etched with strange markings, glowing faintly like it held breath and heartbeat. Mark hesitated. Then, slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside was an egg, pale gold, pulsing softly, like it was alive. Like it was waiting. A cold breeze swept through the doorway. Mark turned sharply. The village priest stood there, half-shadowed, his face unreadable. "She didn't leave nothing," he whispered, stepping forward. "She left a choice." Mark's voice cracked. "What is it?" The priest's gaze fell on the glowing egg. "What she left behind may save us, or doom us all." And with that, he turned and disappeared into the trees. Mark knelt before the clay pot, unsure if his hands should reach out or run away. Outside, thunder rumbled low. And in the corner of the room, the snakeskin moved, just slightly, as if the story wasn't done. Fade to black. To be continued. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when part 4 drops. You won't want to miss what happens next.